I was just running up and down the stairs, so I'm old, fat, and winded. Haven't updated in a while, so I'm trying to keep it short. Because strategically, not much has happened in the past 7 days. Operationally, tactically, on the ground, it's something happening every minute. So put it in perspective. Just because you don't see lines moving doesn't mean nothing is happening, right? Obviously, especially if you look down at Mariupol, right? It is a gross human rights violation being perpetrated by Russia in Mariupol. It's disgusting, right? And I guess I'll start there, right? So, negotiated corridors for people to evacuate the city. Negotiated corridors for people to evacuate the city. Those routes were mined, ambushed, right? And people were killed evacuating the city on agreed upon safety corridors, right? So there is incredible miscarriage of legitimate combat operations by Russia, and it's awful. Estimates of 50 to 100 bombs are dropped on Mariupol daily over the past 10 days, up to really 21 days since the war began, right? Today's D+21. The indirect fire attack, the mines, the direct attacks on civilians. Right? These are war crimes. And when you compound this with Russian army is operating in clear channel, right? Plain channel, plain chat text. There's no encryption on their communications. People are recording. People are listening. There are videos. This is documented. It's incredible, absolutely incredible. So my assessment is really, and I'll focus in the South, is that Russia is expanding their control of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast, right, or states, provinces, administrative regions. Russia really has control of those oblasts. Russia has really completed building a corridor here in the south, all the way through Kherson. Okay? Now, this isn't a wide swath of Russian-controlled land, right? It's the coast and like 20 miles inland, right? And what's in between, okay? That's the limit of Russian control for most of this area right here, just north of the Sea of Azov, right? There's a little bit of more of a bulge when you get down here. To include Kherson is really under Russian control for the most part at this point, right? So what Russia's really doing is they're building a buffer that's keeping Crimea Russia, right? It's keeping Crimea Russian. So there's they built a buffer here. So their next, I think their next objective, still to this day, they really aren't making significant progress there, is Nikolaev, all right, or Mykolaiv. All right. Ukrainian army has had 3 weeks to build a very deliberate defense of Nikolaev, and they've done it. It is deliberate. It is reinforced with obstacles, tactical obstacles, protective obstacles. Indirect fires are integrated. This is rehearsed. So Ukraine has an exceptional defense built here in Nikolaev. And I've had this hot box over here over Nikolaev and Odessa for almost 2 weeks, right? Yeah, so Russia wants to complete this seizure of terrain that is along the coast of Ukraine, right? So all Ukraine has in coastline now is here on the Black Sea, effectively, as of today, right? The Sea of Azov is Russian controlled, right? All that coastline on the Sea of Azov is, because this is Russia here, right? That's all Russian controlled. All right? So Sea of Azov is under Russian control. All right, so Ukraine is fighting to maintain their coastline on the Black Sea. All right, particularly Nikolaev and Odessa. Odessa being natural deep water port on the Black Sea. Massive implications to a nation state being landlocked. All right? The cost of everything skyrockets when your country is landlocked. Right? Your exports, right? Profit from exports goes down because transportation costs go up. Imports cost goes up because you have to transit across land. Sea is cheaper. This is why I've always said, for decades now, I turned 45 this weekend, right? I'm not that old. I have always said that the most important military service on this planet is the United States Navy, because it ensures the movement of commerce across the major oceans, right? Not here in the Black Sea, but the Atlantic Pacific, the Indian Ocean, are really open and free for world economies to function because of the United States Navy. All right? Ukraine loses this coastline on the Black Sea. They lose their ability to affordably import and export goods. Right? Because as you know, the Black Sea goes down through the Bosphorus into the Mediterranean, take the Mediterranean out to the Atlantic, or you can cut down through Egypt into the Indian Ocean and out to the Pacific, right? So critical that Ukraine maintains access and control of their deep water ports in the Black Sea. That cannot be stated enough, right? You can't overstate the importance of maintaining sovereign deep water ports. It will cost tens of millions of dollars to the Ukrainian economy, right? So Russia absolutely wants to complete making Ukraine landlocked, and then being able to go to a bargaining table of like, we got what we want. We own the Sea of Azov, which is the Black Sea anyway. We own the Black Sea. We're done. We're good. It's a big deal, right? So continue to watch Nikolaev and Odessa, all right? This is the next big fight. Big fight. Another thing. All right, so I think this is short-term strategic objective number 1. I don't think it's Kyiv. Not yet. Nikolaev, that's number 1. Number 2, Dnipro. Here. Okay, what is Dnipro? It controls the Dnieper River, all right, which is a deep draft river, natural river, That allows the movement of goods over water. Water is moving stuff over water is cheaper than moving it on land, period. All right. Also, major rail hub. Right? Ukraine's rail network really hubs out of Dnipro. Okay, so it's a couple things. It's economy based, right? Because the next most after sea, the next most affordable mode of transportation is rail. Right? The last thing we want to do is move it in trucks or fly it rail. Flying is the worst. Trucks is next, then rail, then sea, right? Because it's about volume, it's about capacity, right? Rail's massive capacity and moves at a relatively quick pace. So here we can dock a rather large vessel, transfer from water to land, right, via rail, and we can still function in economy. We do this in the United States, right? Look at our major seaports, and look at the rail infrastructure at our ports. Okay, so Dnipro wouldn't be much different than, say, like a St. Louis in terms of economic importance. You can even it's close to, it's not far off from like a Chicago or a Detroit, right, which are ports on Great Lakes. But there is access. There are rails, lots of them. They node out of here. So, take that into account that Nikolaev, strategic objective 1, Dnipro 2, and Odessa 3. Right? Dnipro and Odessa, you may be able to flip those two and make decisions going forward based on that. Right, but those are the three big objectives for Russia right now. I think they're in the south. 2 in the south, and then 1 really is kind of east, slightly east central. Okay. What we've seen in the north, as well as in the east, between Sumy, Kharkiv, Izium, are some Ukrainian army counterattacks. Whatever's happened over the past week, that's operationally, strategically, this is kind of slowed down on the Russian front, has enabled the Ukrainian ground forces to conduct a limited counterattack, and they have, and they've seen success. So I think continue to watch that. My map's a little bit more conservative on what Russia actually controls. If you look at other maps, you'll see a big red blob up here that shows Kyiv is really surrounded by Russia. I don't think that's completely accurate. Because you can look at the social media feed, and you can see that specifically here north, this Russian column, and this is really an army, combined arms army, is attempting to that 40-mile long jam is moving. Right, it's not stationary anymore, and they're trying to really get that isolate on the west, which is something a month ago, before the invasion started, I said that they're going to isolate. They want to isolate the capital, right? It looks like they're trying to do that. What they haven't really taken into account is a good terrain and weather analysis of Ukraine, because if they had, Russia would well know that traveling off of roads with heavy armored vehicles right now is a bit troublesome, because it's the wet season, right? And it's wet because we're transitioning from winter to spring in Ukraine, right? So as snow melts, it saturates the ground. The ground is saturated, right? track vehicle, any vehicles traveling off road, have significant trouble, right? And look and an analysis of the subsurface, right? It's very rich soil, right? It's not gravel. It's not, right? So it's very soft, especially here in north central Ukraine. Very soft earth, and T80s and T72s and BMPs are just sinking. And once they sink and they're stuck, they're easy targets for Ukraine's dismounted javelins and other anti-tank guided missile systems that have made their way into Ukraine from the United States, from UK, Germany, Sweden, right? Having devastating effect on Russian armor. And if the ATGMs don't kill the Russian armor, the Ukrainian farmer and his John Deere's coming out there hooking up to that tank, pulling it out. It's getting refit, quick paint job, and is going into the service of the Ukrainian army, right? So, while a lot of folks have big red blobs here surrounding Kyiv, it's still really contained to the roads, which is what I try to demonstrate on my graphic here. Russia's still really tied to the roads. And then when they try to go off-road, they're having issues because of terrain and weather. Right? Either they didn't do the terrain and weather analysis, or they didn't communicate it, or soldiers at the tactical level don't care. Right? It's all bad. And the effects of that are not good. Right? So let me see what else I got here. I've been talking the whole time, past month plus, about the air picture. What I think is happening, because the volume of bombs being dropped, especially in the south, is that while close air support is essentially non-existent on the Russian side, because Russia's close air support capability, Su-30s, 34, 30, it's taken a beating. I think what we're seeing now is Russia is using more long-range bombers, flying at much higher altitudes, right? And just we're not quite carpet bombing. This isn't a linebacker too, but we're seeing devastating dumb bombs just being dropped from high altitude, right? And the higher the altitude you drop from, generally is a lower, probability of hitting your actual target. But Russia doesn't really care right now. They're not looking for precision. They're looking for volume and achieving a terror effect, right? And they're getting that, right? They're getting that. Or at least they believe they're achieving their desired effect, right? It is terror. It is terror from the skies. 500 to 100, 50 to 100 bombs daily dropped on Mariupol, right? And that's coming from Russia's strategic bombers, right? Just dropping dumb bombs. Okay? So, an area weapon system, not a precision-guided munition. Okay? Some of my still burning questions. What's the inflation tolerance of Western economies? Because we see inflation going up, 0.1% every day. How much longer can Western economies absorb the rate of inflation before they begin the pressure for peace? Right? We haven't seen that yet. But somewhere in there's a line. All right, and when do we hit that line? When do we cross that line? Okay. So keep your eye on that. What's the tolerance in Western economies for inflation? Russian offensive cyber, electronic warfare, psychological operations. This stuff's still missing. Like, where is it? You know, it's not consumed in use, right? So this isn't like precision guided munitions that are consumed in use and you have to replenish them. It's not really there. Not in any discernible quality or quantity. Right? Another question: what's the status of rails from Russia, Belarus into Ukraine? Right? Because we know Ukraine, disabled the rail network. Right? So Russia could not conduct logistics in Ukraine because Russian logistics is rail based. Right? I'm going to keep my Russian log box up here for a while. Right? Just as a reminder. Still not seeing attacks on critical infrastructure, right? Which tells me Russia wants to preserve infrastructure of Ukraine. Another thing is we're not seeing the mass bomb runs in Kyiv that we're seeing in other major cities in Ukraine. All right? We've seen it in Chernihiv. We've seen it in Mariupol, Kherson, Kharkiv, right? We've seen massive indirect fires and bombs dropped in those cities. We're not seeing it in Kyiv. There are missile attacks. There are bombs being dropped. I'm not saying it's not happening, but not to the volume of and level of destruction we're seeing in other major cities. Right? Which tells me that Russia wants to try to preserve Kyiv as much as they can, because there is historical context in the city of Kyiv. Right? It has an 800-year history as the capital of Kiev and Rus, right? So don't think Putin's stupid. He understands the historical significance of Kyiv to what his construct of Rus and Russian is. Right? It has significance. That's why it's preserved as well as it is right now. You know, Poltava also has historical significance. That's why I don't think we've seen Poltava shelled to the degree we've seen other cities. Right? Sumy doesn't have this. Kharkiv, Mariupol, they don't have the same historical significance as a Kyiv and a Poltava. Okay? So keep the history, you know, in mind when you think about this conflict, because it all has meaning. All right? I'm still watching their 3 battalion tactical groups, Russian over here in Transnistria. Right? This is the disputed eastern sector of Moldova. Right? Moldova itself being a landlocked country. Right? So look at Moldova's economy sometime. It's awful. Right? My little bowl of pretzels here has a better economy than Moldova does. Right? They're landlocked. It doesn't do well to be a landlocked country. Okay. We see updated Russian losses. That's from the Kyiv Independent. Again, its reality is about 2/3. Right. So multiply any of these by 2/3, and I think you're getting an accurate representation of what Russia's losses. I've seen some traffic regarding Russia's depot level capability. I've seen pictures of T-72s and T-80s in Russian depot. Those aren't operational vehicles. There's like grass growing, not just a little bit, like penetrating armor, right? Foliage. So Russia's ability to replenish combat losses, even from their depot level stocks, is very difficult. It required a large maintenance focus manpower, repair parts, you need something like an Anniston Army Depot level of refit and regeneration to get their depot equipment into the fight. So when we look at, Russia has 12,000 tanks. Well, no, they don't. They've got like 3,000 tanks and 9,000 in depot, and their depot's not like the depot. It's not like APS 3, right? That's Army Preposition Stock 3, right? It's not an American preposition stock. It's a piece of land with a bunch of tanks on it, just parked tightly, and those tanks and infantry fighting vehicles and infantry carriers are being consumed by nature, right? So their depot level stocks are in horrible condition, so their losses are significant. Their losses are significant, particularly when those are abandoned vehicles that are immediately refit and introduced into the Ukrainian army. Last thing I'll hit on today. So, hey, I got to keep it under 30 minutes. Time change, right? United States, daylight savings time, right? So now we're in Eastern Daylight Time. So now Kyiv is +6 from us instead of +7. Ukraine does have daylight savings time. All right, so they will enter it's March 27th, right, is when their clocks change. All right, and then that will go back to +7, right, when they spring forward in 10 days from now. Okay, so that's significant updates I've put together myself. If you're not following Germany of the West on Twitter, you're really doing yourself a disservice. I claim to be a protege of Germany, not of Clausewitz. But great products, right? And look, immediately knows that the impacts of weather are incredible. His refugees to other European countries. He's got a 304. I had like 3 million plus, right? So, always great products. And this is just one slide out of like 18 he puts together daily. And I've said it before. This isn't just one dude. This is a team. This is a team of I'm pretty certain these are U.S. Army strategists and strategic intel planners who put this together. Whether they're using what system or if it's open source. Germany says it's OSINT. If he says it's open source intelligence, it's open source intelligence. But it's pretty darn good. The green squares, right? Those are Ukrainian units. And Germany's come out and said this is not the exact disposition of Ukraine's forces. But they are the disposition of Russia's forces. Right, so keep that in mind. He is on the Ukrainian side. All right. This is from the Institute for the Study of War, a little brain trust of the United States Army out of West Point, New York. Right, and if you look here, their blobs are a bit bigger than mine, but these dash lines around a blob, right, that's assessed Russian advances. If it's yellow, that's acclaimed Russian control. Right, and then you see some Ukrainian counterattack. Right, that's Russia's 4th Tank Division there, who's getting their butts whipped. That's supposed to be the elite of the Russian army, not doing well. So there's the Institute for the Study of War. That's what they say Russia controls. I think they're going a little bit overboard. I don't think it's quite that much. And I think Russia is largely constrained by terrain and weather. So there we go. 29 minutes and 50 seconds. We're going to end it before 30 minutes. All right. There we go. Enjoy.